Right then, first of all, we're going to start with the rumours, then we'll move on to the opinion piece. So earlier on today, the Telegraph ran a report saying that West Ham and Southampton were in talks over a swap deal for Kyle Walker-Peters and Flynn Downes. Fabrizio Romano went one further and said that Kyle Walker-Peters has already said yes to West Ham United, but at the same time, the Athletic were reporting that Flyn Downs was perhaps a little bit reluctant to go to Southampton due to Edson Alvarez's injury. That could give him a second opportunity at West Ham. However, this afternoon, the Athletic have done a latest report which has stated that Southampton are offering Kyle Walker-Peters plus cash in return for Flyn Downs. Now, there's a little bit of context to be added here. Kyle Walker-Peters has only got 1 year left on his contract at Southampton, hence why it might feel like a low valuation on their part of their player, but the hands are forced a little bit. Frankie, let's start off with Kyle Walker-Peters, I think, because naturally we all get more excited for players coming in than we do for players leaving your football club, or we certainly should be anyway. If you're excited for a player leaving, that's not a good sign. He's not been good for your team. But in terms of Kyle Walker-Peters, obviously we need a right back with Ben Johnson joining Ipswich Town. Is he somebody that would get the approval from Frankie?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a pretty decent player. I've always thought he's all right. He looked good. I watched a bit of Southampton last year, to be honest, and on their sort of play. Actually, I was looking at it for Flyn Downs, really. That's what I was watching them for. Wasn't really watching it for Kyle Walker-Peters. But, I've always been a fairly, I wouldn't say I'm an admirer of him, but I've always watched him and thought, you know what? He seems all right.
Yeah, I have been an admirer of him. I've been a big fan of him. I think he's very good going forward. Reasonably strong defensively. He won't be the best defensive fullback in the Premier League, but I think he ticks all the boxes as to what we're looking for, really, in terms of a profile. I think he's homegrown as well, which is obviously beneficial because we need to make sure we get a few of them in the squad at some point over this summer, next summer. And given his age as well, 27 years old, it's somebody that could get in and would be here for quite a few seasons' time, because some of the players who are currently homegrown, Aaron Creswell, Michael Antonio, Danny Ings, they'll also be leaving at some point in the not-so-distant future. So we need some players who have a little bit of longevity coming to West Ham. So we've got a homegrown player or two that we just don't need to worry about for another 5-6 years. It was always handy having some players like Johnson and Mark Noble in the team. It was like, there's your two homegrown players. Don't worry about them. Let's just focus on everything else. So we need to sort of get that core back, even if it's just for admin purposes for the squad registration. So I think it makes sense. But in terms of an actual player, I really like him. I've been a big fan of him for quite some time. I mention him frequently enough on this channel. It just makes sense, Frankie. In regards to the deal itself, though, with Downs going to Southampton and Walker-Peters coming in, would you think it's a really good transfer as well as a really good player for us?
No, so it's really two flip sides to this.
Go on.
If I'm going like West Ham head, not thinking too much about what happened last season with Flyn Downs and or even forget that, even what happened last season with Flyn Downs and everything else. We're West Ham. There's no reason why we should need a player going that way to bring in a player we need coming this way. So from my head, I think Flyn Downs is still, if you could pick a squad player, like we just said, we've got to add a few of them. Well, Flyn Downs is one. So at the end of the day, if you want someone who is just a proper West Ham boy at heart, who's going to give everything when he steps onto that pitch, probably will suffer. I think half the problem is I think he enjoyed playing his football last season. He'd always been a player, West Ham, he's sort of floating around. He isn't getting much game time. Well, I'll suffer it. I'm at the club that I want to be at. That's great. Then you go and get a taste of playing first team football again. You start to really enjoy your football. And to be honest, any footballer who's worth his weight should want to play football at the end of the day. Yeah. There are some that just sit there and are happy to take their paycheck, but they ain't ever going to be that good. There's never a surprise that when you call upon those ones, because you get an injury or something, they don't particularly perform very well. Whereas Downs is the sort of player who if we do call upon him, he was always going to come in and give everything and try his best. So we saw it in his bit parts that he come on, he played good football, he went that way. I think he's really enjoyed playing football again, and I think that's a really important factor to him. But part of me feels frustrated that we've got to lose someone to gain someone that we need. We shouldn't have to do that. If Downes is sitting there and he's kicking up a fuss and he's saying, look, no, I enjoyed it there last season. I want to continue that journey. I'm on there with them, whatever else. I would even be half tempted to say, do you know what? We don't even know how you're going to perform in the Premier League next year. Have him on loan for another season. That's what you can have. One more season of loan in Flyn Downs. But we still want to buy Kyle Walker-Peters because that's the player that we're highlighting that we need for our squad next season. I would much rather have seen that than do it in a permanent arrangement where we've got to lose one to gain one.
I think that's a very fair comment, actually. I can't disagree with too much of that. And the whole loan thing makes sense as an incentive. Obviously, it would mean that we'd have to pay Southampton a fee in order to get Kyle Walker-Peters, whereas at the minute they're paying us money to have Flyn Downes and we get Walker-Peters in return, which I'm a bit surprised at in the sense, I mean, it still might be done like this, but swap deals are just hard to get done. In the day and age of PSR, I thought it would be more likely that we'd see two separate transactions happening, which is what they buy Flyn Downes and we buy Walker-Peters, and that way both clubs can post a profit on the player sales, and that looks good in the accounts at the end of the year as well. So that might still happen. It might just be that they pay a few million extra for Flyn Downes compared to what we do for Walker-Peters. I think what you've just said there is very sensible. What I would say when you said about how some players are happy not to play, Downes wasn't in that category, was he? And I think you've seen that when he came in, he would give it his all, but then when he was out again, you always got the vibe that he was a bit frustrated about the lack of game time, hence why he went out on loan last summer, and rather than staying around for another season playing second fiddle, he thought, I'm going to go back to the Championship and get game time. And I think what's quite significant is that his previous two stints in Championship have both been under Russell Martin, albeit at different clubs, and that's possibly part of the appeal for Downes to move down to Southampton on a permanent transfer. I know what the Athletic said earlier about him possibly seeing the Alvarez injury as an opportunity to impress Lopetegui. It would be, the reports in Mexico, he's going to be out for 6 weeks, so he'll miss pre-season. That is an opportunity for Downes and Freddie Potts and Andy Irving, if he's around for pre-season as well. It is a chance for people to impress, but I still feel like there's a bit of a risk element there for Flyn Downes, which is, well, what happens when Edson Alvarez returns? Am I going to stay in the team, or is he just going to come straight back in? Whereas if he wants guaranteed first-team football, he's got that at Southampton. He knows that. And I think Russell Martin's put themselves in a bit of a position because he described Flyn Downes as, the best centre midfielder in Championship or whatever. I don't disagree with him, but he made it very clear he wants Flyn Downes. It possibly puts West Ham in a negotiating position of strength here, which is, well, you want our player more than we want your player. But I think if we can get Walker-Peters and money in return for Downes, and I guess it might depend on how much money, I'd be all for it, truth be told. I think, well, would you consider...
Mate, we can't be that hard up. We can't be that hard up.
Okay, then, let me put it like this. Would you buy Walker-Peters for 12 million?
Yes.
Would you sell Downes for 17 million?
But 70 million does sound quite attractive, I suppose.
So,
I can't lie.
So
it does sound bad.
So
yeah,
there's a 5 million difference, right? So that's effectively what's going to happen. It might not be 5 million. It might be 2 million or something. But I don't think it'd be greater than 5. By the way, I think that'd be possibly be the most that we'd get out of it. I'm trying to judge it as what's Kyle Walker-Peters worth with 1 year left on his contract. 12, 15 million maybe. What do I think Downes is worth? 15, 20 million, somewhere in there, really. So it's sort of splitting it down the middle to some extent. And that's why I think it's a good deal, because we'll see if you agree. Do you think Kyle Walker-Peters is a upgrade on Ben Johnson?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but I think he's quite a big upgrade on Ben Johnson.
I would agree. He's a significant one. Is he an upgrade on Vladimir Soufal?
Well, you said we was going to talk about right backs today. So I had a little bit of research online earlier on. And for many of the sources of right backs across the internet, Soufal is regarded as the 25th best right back in all of the world. So if you take it for their word for it, then I don't know whether he is or whether he ain't. Soufal was in the list and Kyle Walker-Peters weren't. So I don't know who makes these articles up, but yeah, it was quite surprising actually. There isn't an abundance of right backs out there that seem like they're good fits, to be perfectly honest. So this is just what we just said, and I get the points that you're making. It all makes sense. I just felt a bit like we're already a little bit weak, like you're saying. So Alvarez is out. So who plays?
Yeah.
So we haven't really got an option to replace Alvarez at the moment. You certainly wouldn't want Freddie Potts starting at the beginning of the season. So, but if you said Flynn Downes is going to play the first few games of the season, well, it's not great. I think you would say, well, actually, do you know what? Give the boy a chance. I don't think we'd be too upset that Flynn Downes was starting the first few games of the season. So we need numbers. I guess that's my issue with it. It just seems like we shouldn't have to give one up to receive one at the moment. We're already quite a small squad. We just need to add players. So that's, I would have preferred us just to go and buy Kyle Walker-Peters. And I think he's worthy of someone that we should just be looking at as we just need to buy him. I do think but then again, Lopetegui, we don't know how serious he is about Flyn Downes. If he isn't, and we're actually letting one go to get a player in that we really, I think is going to be a big upgrade on the first 11, then it makes perfect sense.
I think this is key really, because when I did an update literally a week ago, last Friday, and I mentioned that Ben Johnson was going to reject the final contract from West Ham and go elsewhere, and I wasn't 100% sure, so I didn't put in the title of the video, but I mentioned at the end of the video. And upon receiving that information, the same information had that Flyn Downes had been told he was going to basically be a squad player next season at West Ham, and he had to fight for the shirt, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. I think it's a very honest answer from Lopetegui if that's what he said to Flyn Downes, but it's possibly not the answer he was wanting to hear.
Yeah.
And like I said, what would you prefer? And if you remove the West Ham fan element from it, which I think he should do, and that is, do you stay at West Ham and fight for your position, or do you go to Southampton and play first team football? Obviously, as West Ham fans, we're going to say, well, the first one, why would you not do that? But as for Flynn's of the age now, he needs to be playing regular football. And I think the move to Southampton, it just makes sense. He suits the manager suits him. It's a really safe move for him to go there. So I think this might appeal to everybody. And I think what's interesting with the latest report from The Athletic is, it suggests it's Southampton that's making the bid rather than West Ham. It's not really us going to Southampton saying, let's work something out. It's them coming to us saying, well, you need a right back. You wanted Walker-Peters in the past previously. You can have him. When we want Flyn Downes, and we'll put a bit of money in. Is there something we can do here? By the sounds of it, West Ham are quite encouraging to it. I do agree that all it does is move the vacancy in the squad from one position to the other. So it's right back's now fulfilled. It'll just become, all right, now we're short in centre midfield rather than right back. But I think it's a really good defender to bring in. And I'd be more than happy with Walker-Peters and Vladimir Soufal as our two right backs next season. I think it's really good competition. I think maybe part of the problem last season was when Soufal was underperforming, the faith wasn't there that Johnson could come in and perform better than an underperforming Soufal. I don't think we'd have that doubts next season if the alternative was Walker-Peters, or if he was the one underperforming. Actually, Soufal can go back in now because he will do better than what you currently are. I think we'd have two really good right backs on our books next season. Walker-Peters can also cover at left back if necessary, which is an option. It means that we perhaps won't have to rely on Aaron Creswell should Emerson be out for a prolonged period of time. We've got an alternative in Walker-Peters rather than Creswell. I think it makes sense. This one makes sense, and I really hope it happens. Actually, I'd be delighted. And there is a little bit of bias there because I'm a fan of Walker-Peters, but that's what being a football fan's all about. Surely having opinions and get your hopes up and being satisfied when you're cut by someone. When you were doing your little research, just out of interest, was there any right backs you did come across that tickled your fancy?
Was tough, slim pickings, really. That in the sort of top 10, they had the guy from Atletico who's now 35. It was a real, the top 10 were sort of players that were unobtainable for West Ham. You're never going to be able to sign the caliber of player that they are, and they're all aging. There was a few sort of. It really looks like that if you wanted take Kyle Walker-Peters out the equation, it was very much you've got to go and sign a very unproven young right back that would be quite a big risk, to be honest. That was how it looked to me. There wasn't many obvious choices that you would look at and say, do you know what, he's perfect for West Ham. And what I wanted to see a right back who's got that kind of, as we said in previous videos, Lopetegui loves playing with ball playing wide defenders. He loves them getting up the pitch. They become very integral to the system of how he plays. And I really wanted to see, because like I said before, that when you list the right backs that he's had available to him throughout his career, he has had that out that top 10 of right backs. Many of them have played for Lopetegui at one point or another, whether it be Carver Howe or whoever it is. So he's always had good right backs available to him who really allow, play to be fluid, for them to get up and support the midfielders and support the attack, but also, can defend as well. So, I wanted to see someone that maybe he'd managed before, that maybe had played out in Spain the way he likes playing football. Yeah, and there wasn't really any bidding list that was obvious that you thought they're at one of those sort of breaking into Europe Spanish clubs that we could convince to come to the Premier League, and the Premier League would be attractive to them. And it would just be someone who Lopetegui knows. There wasn't really any that stood out like that. So it actually makes the Kyle Walker-Peters thing, I guess, even more of an obvious choice, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I think longevity as well. Obviously, we've got Southampton's contract, which expires next summer, and I think it would maybe take the pressure off the club a little bit. And whilst I was I've aired my opinion about Ben Johnson leaving, I'd rather he stayed. I think next summer we'd have had a situation where you've possibly had to go and sign a substantial right back to come in and be first choice right back, on the assumption Ben Johnson didn't increase his game massively and take over from Southampton this season. I think what Walker-Peters would do is next summer maybe not put as much pressure on going getting such a significant right back, because he would and potentially could be our first choice right back for quite a few seasons to come, and would allow us maybe to go and get that younger right back to be his understudy for a couple of seasons, rather than going finding somebody that's good enough to come in and start tomorrow. And obviously, usually costs a lot more money in the process as well. So this is a big thumbs up. And I'm, a lot of the players being linked to this summer, Frankie, I've never heard of. So I've not really got my hopes up about them. I've sort of, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's hard to really get my hopes up. But with this one, this is possibly the first substantial transfer rumour where I've thought, yep, I'm all behind this one. I'm all for it. It's a big thumbs up.
I think as well with the Flyn Downes thing, there's been a couple of videos that you and Gonzo have done lately, and you sort of have that show them the love kind of thing. And we've had under Moyes, we had some issues with him not showing people enough love. I don't think we'll find that under Lopetegui. I think when you watch the videos of him on his first day, when he went up to Earthy, when he went up to Earthy and really sort of had that chat with him and said, I'd heard a lot about you, and this, I think if Downes does go in one direction, I think it would be because Lopetegui doesn't particularly fancy him. And I think if that's the case, we have to accept that the new manager doesn't fancy him. And whether you are, because I think we're quite split as a fan base with Downes. I think there's a lot of people who say, actually, I want to see more of him, and we're quite affectionate towards him because he's one of your own, and he's a West Ham fan. So obviously we're going to show that love back to him. But there are quite a number of people who actually think he isn't good enough to be a first team West Ham regular as well. So, we're kind of divided, but I think we all have to just accept that if the manager doesn't really fancy him, then he's got to move on, and that's that.
Well, final question there. Where are you on the Flyn Downes?
No, I like him. The pass that he made within the move to get the goal for Southampton in the playoff final shows you what he's all about. And I'm quite surprised because I felt like he probably is a better ball player for me than Alvarez. I think he's quite good at getting his foot on the ball, getting on the half turn. It's everything that England's been missing in this tournament so far. Someone who picks up the ball and gets the play moving forward. I think he's very, very good at that. But he's also, very energetic. He's for me, this is going to sound quite funny actually. He reminds me of a younger James Ward-Prowse. That's the type of player that I make him out to be. And some people are like that and some people won't. But that's what I get for him. A very hard-working, good technical, on the ball. He's never going to set the world on fire. He's never going to go and get into the England squad for me. I don't think he's ever going to be someone we look at West Ham and go, wow, he's a world-class player. But is he going to be for our level? And again, people will moan at that. They'll say, actually, well, we should be trying better. We should be progressing as a football club now. That's not the type of player that we should be after anymore or be independent on anymore. But I do think that you do need a squad.
Yeah.
And we haven't got European football this season, so it's a little bit more difficult. But I just feel like having him around for one more season, just for Lopetegui to have a real good look at him. He might not fancy him from what he's seen so far, but up close can be very, very different. If he saw that commitment on the training ground, it might be one of those that we look at and think we regret letting him go somewhere down the line. And it might be someone that we actually look back on and go, do you know what? It was the best thing that we could have done moving him on. So I'm really like that with him. That's why I just felt one more season of having a look at him would have been worthwhile, especially like we said, homegrown quarter, small squad. But if we get this right back, which is a key position for us, and a lot of people, again, Soufal, some people like him, he's hardworking. I actually think he's quite limited, Soufal. I've never been a huge fan. He does work hard, he does graft, he puts himself on the line from time to time and everything else. That's the player that I think we know exactly what we get with Soufal now. Why there's still some unknowns with Downes, Soufal, we know exactly what he is. And that's where I do think Kyle Walker-Peters is as we said earlier, a significant upgrade on him. Soufal to call on off the bench, great. My only concern with what you said earlier on about us having the two right backs there is Soufal has already grumbled, if you believe some of the rumours that have come out at times. And how happy will he be with sitting on the bench and being the second choice right back next season? I can see him not particularly being favourable to that, and eventually, but we'll see. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. What I really want to see from that situation is Soufal not accepting that he's second string and fighting for that position, and then you've got two players really fighting it out to be the first choice. That's what we want to see. Don't see it often in football anymore, mate, do you? It's either one's happy and one sort of gets the ump. So, but it would be really nice to see two people battling it out for a position, because we haven't really had that, have we? We've had a starting 11 that's kind of picks itself for a long time now. So it would be nice to see a bit of competition in there.
Yeah, and almost when you make a change to the 11 you want to see for the upcoming game, it's because of poor form rather than anything else. Quite often it was the left wing position the season before last. You'd have, like you said, Antonio, Bowen, Paqueta, Rice, Souček. You had your back four. You had Ariel and goal, and it was Fornals or Benrahma. Which one? Oh, put Fornals in. A couple of bad games. All right, time for Benrahma. All right, time for Fornals. You just alternate the left winger, really, and that was pretty much it. Obviously, it's like I said, season before last didn't have Kudus at the time. That's why I've not included him. I think Soufal is still a really good right back, and I've seen some people say they thought he had a bad Euros. I thought he had a good Euros for Czechia. Actually, I thought he looked quite good. I did. I thought he looked good. I thought his corners were fantastic. Did not know he could take a corner, but his delivery was really good and could take a long throw for Czechia for some reason. Whenever it's at West Ham, it hits the first man on the front post, but when it's for his country, he's able to land on the penalty spot. So I think he's still got something to offer, but I think this would be a good deal for us, and one that, like you said, healthy competition at right back, two strong players at right back as well, and yeah, good. But anyway, Frankie, thank you very much. Pleasure as always. If you guys at home have enjoyed it, please do drop a like on it, subscribe if you're new to Hammer's channel, get involved in the comments below, give us your thoughts on the possibility of Flynn Downes joining Southampton with Kyle Walker-Peters with a little bit of cash coming back another way. We'll catch you in a bit.